All right, here we go. So we are talking about when chametz should be batel, when it should be nullified. Again, the notion of nullifying chametz, which we'll continue to analyze and continue to unpack. Basically, the idea is that I am making it completely, it's ownerless and it's meaningless. Both of those things are happening when I say it is batel. When I say kol chamir v'chamia, that sentence, that paragraph that I say after b'dikas chametz, which by the way, in some ways is more important than b'dikas chametz. People are, I did b'dikas chametz. No. You must say that last paragraph. It's very, very important. So when you do that, that is something which is the Gemara is questioning when it should be done. So the Gemara says, why are you doing it at the time of B'dikas Chametz? Let's just go back to 6b3, the last word on column number 1. Again, 6b3, last word on the bottom line. When you find the Chametz, just nullify it. The Gemara says you can't do that. Because if you find it after the time that's already prohibited, it's not actually considered in your property. Now, what does that mean? Let's just understand what this means. You can't mevatel it. So, what is something to be mine? To be mine, the definition of something that is mine is that I could use it. So this Gemara is mine. It's not from Murray's, but even the ones that Murray bought us, thank you, Murray. It should be the Neshama of his mother-in-law. So those Gemaras, right? So once he gave them to you, they became yours. Now, what is the definition of mine? Is something I have usage for, something I have usage of, something I'm able to do something with. That means it's mine. If something is asur behana, if something cannot be benefited from, by definition, it's not mine. And therefore, the Gemara is Gemara is assuming, it's just going to substantiate this in a moment, but the Gemara says that chametz, once there is a isser for chametz, and again, it's not a isser and then it's going to become allowed again. Chametz shavar Pesach is also asr. The point is that once something is asr, it is always asr. That means it's no longer mine. So the Gemara says that maybe you're going to find the reason that you can't nullify it when you find it. The Gemara is saying maybe because you'll find it on Pesach or at least after midday on Erev Pesach, and therefore at that point, since I can't benefit from it, it's not mine. I can't nullify your items. I can't nullify items that don't belong to me. And after Chatzos, since I can't benefit from it, it's not mine. And therefore, the Gemara is suggesting right now the reason that I go ahead and do bittul the night before is because there's a concern that I'm going to find the chametz on Pesach proper, or at least after Chatzos. It's not something I could benefit from, and therefore it's not mine, and therefore I can't do mivatel it. Yeah, you with me? So Gemara now just points out this notion that something that chametz is not really yours after Chatzos. There are two things which are not legally in a person's possession. The Torah treated it like it's in your possession. When it says it's treated like you're in your possession, it means that you're responsible for it nonetheless. In other words, one could say, based on what I just said, wait a second, if chametz after Chatzos is something I can't benefit from, then after Chatzos, I could just leave all the chametz in my house. Let's say I had a busy year Pesach. I'm an accountant. Okay, whatever it is. I'm not, but clearly not. What's it called? But the point is that it's a busy era Pesach. So I say, let me leave the chametz there. Comes Chatzos, it's not mine anymore. It's not mine. Okay, fine. Sometime during the day, I'm going to go ahead and, sometime during Pesach, I'll go and throw it out. Or after Pesach, I'll throw it out. But it's not mine anymore. No, the Torah says still, if you have chametz on Pesach, that's a big deal. Kares, etc., etc. So what's going on over here is that even though it's not legally yours, the Torah treats it as yours. Right? You see what's happening? It's on both. On the one hand, it's not really yours, and yet the Torah says that doesn't work. You can't say, "Oh, since I have no benefit from it, therefore it's not mine." No, it is yours in one respect, and therefore it's treated as yours. What's the other case? The other two things. Bar b'shus rabim. Let's say you dig a pit in the public domain. Right? When I dig a pit, whose pit is that? It's not mine. It belongs to the municipality. Right? I don't own it, and yet if someone falls in it, who's responsible? I am. Right? So we treat it as if it's yours, right? Similar, and the other thing is chametz after the 6th hour also, even though it's not really my possession, but the Torah treats it as it's mine. But the bottom line is, aside from the fact that the Torah treats it as mine in terms of liability, in terms of the fact that I'll be punished if I own it, nonetheless, it's really not mine, and therefore, if I find it during Pesach, I will not be able to mivatel it. So the Gemara now asks.
Two things that play with the chametz. One is the technicality, like, do you own it? Then the other is that we're afraid you might come to eat it. So that's why is that why the Gemara is treating it as if it's yours?
No, the Gemara is treating it as mine, not as a decree. The Torah is treating it as yours because the Torah says that if you have chametz on Pesach, you're chayiv kares. So, biblically, the concern I'm going to eat it is a rabbinic thing. The Gemara is saying that the Torah treats it as yours, not for any decree, but even though you don't have a na, and therefore by definition it's not yours, yet the Torah says you're liable for punishments for having it. So not due to necessarily to any decree. If there's something intrinsically exceptional about this case, right? Yeah. Fine. Okay, ask the Gemara. Okay, fine. So you pointed out that it can't be done from 6 hours and on, from the 6th hour and on, because then you don't have, you cannot benefit from it. So just why we have to do bittul? Again, we're trying to figure out the details of the halachos. Why, when we do bir chametz at night, okay, do we then go ahead and say that it's batel, that we do say kol chamira? Just say it in the morning. Why do we say it at night? So Gemara says, Kevan d'lav zman isurahu, since the 4th or 5th hour of the day is not a time that is prohibited, okay, meaning, okay, v'lav zman bi'uruhu, it's also not a time of the disposal. Dilam pashval and batale, person, it's possible person's going to just forget and not nullify. In other words, imagine Pesach, okay, at night you do b'digas chametz, in the day you do bir chametz, okay, and now at some random hour in the middle of the day, do bittul. It's not very helpful, right? If you want to remember something, do it at a time. This is actually, they point out for memory purposes, if you want to or create a habit, if you want to create a habit, what do? If you want to make it shachar, you put it into something that you're already doing. Like if you want to, I don't know, whatever, you want to exercise, you put it in, you tuck it into some part of your day, right? So over here, the Gemara is saying, if I'm going to go ahead and just put beer, do the bittul paragraph in the middle of the day where it's not connected to anything else, it's very possible I'm going to forget. So the Gemara says, "V'nivat lebeshis." Okay, fine. So do it at the 6th hour, which is when you destroy the chametz. The Gemara says, no. Since there's already rabbinic prohibition associated with it, right? Because by the 6th hour, when you do beer chametz, right? When you go and burn your chametz, it's already been an hour plus of time that you have already not been allowed to benefit from the chametz. So there's already a rabbinic prohibition. Kidoraisa damya. It is as if it's biblically prohibited. And therefore it's not, meaning because you can't have benefit from it. Granted, it's from a rabbinic perspective, but that being the case, once you can't eat the chametz, then already there's a prohibition against benefit. Once you can't benefit from the chametz, then it's not yours. So therefore you cannot nullify it at that time. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, if you're allowed to still burn it, then it must be yours in some fashion, because you're not going to burn something that nobody owns. Right? What are you accomplishing?
Right, but you're also allowed to burn. But yes, no, that's not true. In other words, if I see something's hefker, am I allowed to burn it? The answer is 100%, even though it's 100% not mine. Right? I can go ahead. If I go ahead,
a bracha on burning something that isn't yours.
Okay.
Right? You wouldn't make a bracha on.
I hear.
So there's got to still be yours if you have to be burning it.
Okay, fine. Tzarchin. Let's go. Yeah, I hear. Damar of Gidol, Amar of Chia Bar Yasser. I hear you. I'm not. Yeah. Amar of Yosef Amarav. Hamikadosh. So he's going to substantiate this point that even when it's rabbinically prohibited, it's not yours. What's the proof? Hamikadosh b'shei shos lamala. Afil b'chitei kordanaisa in choshen l'kiddushin. Okay. So the bottom line is, a person marries someone. Right? So in order to affect kiddushin, you have to give something, right? You normally give a ring, but you don't have to give a ring. Let's say a person wants to be do shtick under the chuppah. They go ahead and they go, okay, I'm going to marry you with. I don't know, whatever, something else. I'm going to go and marry you with this chumash that I own. Okay, so they go ahead and they give the person the chumash. That would technically work. So the person goes ahead and gives chametz. This is a type of grain which is hard to make chametz. But the point is that the Cordonian wheat is very, very thick wheat, hard, thick wheat, so it's hard to make it chametz. But the bottom line is, if it's chametz and if it's only rabbinically prohibited, I still can't marry someone. If I want to get married on Erev Pesach, which is insane, I can't do so. Once chametz is aser, I cannot go ahead and give that chametz, even though it's aser midrabanan, right? So the Gemara is proving that when something is aser midrabanan in chosh l'kiddushin, the kiddushin is not going to work. Fine. So now the Gemara says, wait, what's going on? Our assumption until now is that after the time that's prohibited, you can't nullify it. Is that so? Vatanya, we have a brisa that seems to argue this. Hayoshev is matters. The Gemara, the brisa says, the person was sitting and learning in the base matters. And the person realizes they have chametz in their house. Okay, mivatlo belibo. You should nullify it in your house. In your heart, Echad Shabbos, Echad Yom Tov, whether it's Shabbos or Yom Tov. Now, what's going on over here? What's going on over here is a person sitting in front of the Rebbe. Now, back in the day, a person would have what we, there's a lot, there's no notion of fear of sense of if I'm sitting in front of my Rebbe in the middle of the lecture, I'm not walking out. You can walk out. What's it called? But the point is that you can't walk out. It would be completely disrespectful and something no one would ever do. So a person's sitting there in the learning, and of course their mind's wandering, and all of a sudden they realize I have chametz in my house. So Gemara says, be mevatla in your heart. And then the brisa concludes whether it's Shabbos or it's Yom Tov. So the Gemara is not going to try to figure out what day are we talking about that this is going on. That you're being mevatel your chametz while you're sitting in front of your Rebbe. So Bishlam Shabbos Mishkachas Law, the case of Shabbos makes sense. Kigon Shechol Arba Asulius B'Shabbos. It could be when the 14th of Nisan, meaning Erev Pesach, falls in on Shabbos. So we're talking about a case where it's Shabbos morning, okay, so it's 9 o'clock on Shabbos morning, and chametz is still 100% permitted, because it's 9 o'clock in the morning, right? Like we had this year, right? And so you're sitting there in Shir, and you're like, wait a second, by the time I get home, it's gonna be too late. Okay, so Mavatal L'chametz right now. Okay, no problem there. Ela Yamtiv, what case of Yamtiv are we talking about? Basri Suruhu. By definition, it's after it's already Asr. We were just, until now the Gemara is making an assumption that when something is Asr, i.e. when Pesach already starts or it's already forbidden, then you can't be Mevatlet. But yet this Bryce is saying that on Yamtiv, you are going to go ahead and be mevatel the chametz. What's the scenario? The Gemara says, We're talking about a student sitting in front of his teacher, and a person remembers that he has kneaded dough inside their house. It's not chametz now. The concern is that it's going to become chametz. So a person allowed to go ahead and nullify it before it becomes chametz. Now, you and I don't make bread on Pesach. It's not a good idea. We don't do it. But in theory, you can make bread on Pesach. You just have to make sure it doesn't rise, right? So back in the day, they didn't buy matzah for the wheat, whatever it is. They basically made bread, and they were careful to make sure that it doesn't become chametz. So we're talking about a case, it's already yomtiv, and a person goes ahead and they need some dough, and they leave it there, and like, oh yeah, I'll get it in a few minutes, and they start learning, like, whoa, oh my gosh, there's chametz, there's this bread there that might be rising, right? And so that's the case we're talking about, a case where it's not yet chametz, and the person is nullifying it. So the bottom line is the Gemara is resting, saying that yes, a person cannot be mevatel chametz on Pesach. That case is the case where we're talking about bread or matzah, which is potentially going to become chametz. Daikanami, we could substantiate this by the fact that Brisa says, the fact is that the person is sitting in the study hall. Why is that mentioned? It's mentioned because we're saying it's a case where a person, if they leave right away, it would help. Meaning, why give that weird scenario? Just say a person has some chametz, and they want to be vatlet. By saying it's the base measure, that means that we're talking about a case where a person doesn't want to leave this second. If they would, it would help, and therefore they're going to leave later, right? So what would be a case like that, right? If it's already chametz, who cares? If we leave now or leave later. By saying it's the case of the base medrash of the Rebbe, we're obviously talking about a case where if the person would leave now, it would be good, it would be fine, i.e. it wouldn't rise, it wouldn't become chametz. If they leave later, it would become chametz. Shema mina, that's the case we're talking about. Okay, let's go a little further. Amar Rabba, a bit of a strange case. Bottom line is, back in the day, people had, or maybe still to this day, yeah, some people have like bread boxes. Anyone have a bread box? People have bread boxes. There we go. Fantastic. Okay, so bread boxes. So what they would do is during the year, they would put chametz there, and on Pesach, they clean it out. I don't recommend this, but that's fine. You're gluten free. Yeah, okay, fine. You're fine. Okay, you're gluten free, right? Anyways, fine. The bottom line is that in their bread box, what they would do is they clean it out before Pesach, they put matzah in. Now the problem is a person on Pesach, Amarav Baravuna Amarav, Hapasha Ipsha, they have bread found on Pesach that's spoiled. And it's impossible to tell whether it's chametz or matzah. Okay, and for us this sounds bizarre, because our matzah looks radically different than bread, right? But if you've been to a Sephardi person's house, or not even, they're eating pizzas, right? They're eating one pizza's matzah, one pizza's chametz, and it's very hard you can't tell. Was this matzah? Was this chametz? You have no idea. So you find a piece of spoiled bread, flour, water substance, and you're not sure, is this chametz or is this matzah? Kevan sharavsa matzah, assuming that the total amount of matzah in the box is greater than the total amount of matzah, than the total amount of this potential chametz b'teres, it's going to be permitted. Okay, so what it says, if you found a bunch of pieces, those are clearly matzah pieces, and there's one of these, okay, so the majority is matzah, you're allowed to assume this piece is also matzah. Another Gemara is going to go on a bit of a lumdish, a little bit of a complicated discussion about why this assumption is allowed to be made. Okay, bear with me. I know this is not the most relevant case for us, but let's go. Hey Chidami, what's the case? If you knew that it was chametz, okay, if you know that it was chametz at one point, if you knew this was chametz, then having a majority piece of matzah doesn't help. There's no bittul, right? This is an important principle we have to know. There's no bittul. Normally if you drop a piece of pork into your cholent, right? And, this case we're not bittul anyways, but let's just mention this principle. You drop a piece of pork into your cholent. If Zev's making cholent for Shabbos over here, and Dennis comes by and he drops a piece of his McDonald's into our cholent, he should not, if you would call me, I'd say serve the cholent. Don't tell anyone, serve the cholent, because it's 100% mutter. If it gets mixed in, it's 100% mutter. But if we were making Pesach over here, which maybe we will, yeah, and fine, and then someone drops a piece of bread, a crumb of bread into our food on Pesach, no bittul. No bittul. Bittul doesn't apply on Pesach. Okay, rather, it must be talking in a case where we don't know whether it's chametz or matzah. My iri crops a matzah, right? Why do we need to say that its majority is matzah? That's what's going to be permitted. I feel like kilo rav some matzah nami, even if there's not a greater amount that is matzah there. Nasal basar basra. Go after the last circumstance. Okay, so we'll see what this last circumstance principle is. But the basic idea that the Gemara is going to be asking is that since you went ahead and cleaned out this bread box, right? And you know that you cleaned out this bread box, so therefore and then you start putting in matzah, you should assume that since the last circumstance that you're aware of was that you cleaned out the bread box and you got rid of all the bread, you therefore should assume, right? And you know you cleaned before Pesach, and you know therefore that you cleaned out this bread box, you could assume that whatever is here is matzah. So the Gemara is going to say like this. Milot's not. First of all, the Gemara proves this point. Didn't we learn? Okay, so like this. Ma'os shenimtzu lifnei sochrei behema. When you find money in Yerushalayim back in the day in front of animal dealers, animal dealers were, what they were having is people have meiser sheni. It is one of the tithes that we have, and basically what they would do, without getting into all the details, person would come to Yerushalayim with money of meiser sheni. This is sanctified money. They would give it over to the animal sellers, and they would buy an animal and then bring that animal as a shach that animal. Okay, but you find money in front of the money dealers, in front of the animal dealers in Yerushalayim. La'olam meiser. You have to assume the money that's found there is meiser sheni. It's holy money, can't be used for anything else. Bahar Abayis, if it's found in the Temple Mount, chulid. You could always assume the money is non-sacred. We'll come back to why that's the case. Yerushalayim, anywhere else in Yerushalayim, b'shas regel meiser, during the time that people are coming from all over the world to Yom Tiv, there you have to assume it's meiser sheni money. B'shari Mos Hoshana chulin, during the rest of the year, you could assume it's not non-sacred. Okay, so that's an the statement. The Gemara now explains. Shmaya bar Zera, my time. What's the reason? Why is it that during the year you assume that any money found when it's not the pilgrimage, the festivals, when it's not the Yom Tovim, you could assume it's not meiser money, it's just money that a person brings, that a person in Yerushalayim is walking around with, because in Yerushalayim they swept every day, like they do nowadays. They sweep every day, and therefore, and what that means is, therefore, you could assume that money found now, if I find money today, which is not next to a Yom Tov, in the middle of Av, right, I could assume that the money is not from Pesach or Shavuos, because they swept since then, right? Alma Amrina Kamai Azlilei. We assume whatever is there before is gone. And it's different. So Achanami, Nema Kama Azal, whatever was there before, it's gone. V'haida inahu, and this is new pieces, this is new bread. It's new substance, therefore it's matzah, right? In as much as by the chulin, as much as when I find something in Yerushalayim during a middle of Av, I could assume that it's or even in the middle of Iyar, I could assume that what was there for Pesach was swept away because they clean it out. In the base of English, by the way, they didn't have to clean because it's on a hill, and therefore they didn't sweep as much because whenever everything would just fall down that hill. But throughout Yerushalayim, they sweep. So same here, you clean for Pesach. Anything you find now, it's new. So Gemara says no. Shani hachidi pusha mochiach halivai. The difference is it's not just a regular coin. It's not just a regular piece of bread. It's spoiled. What does spoiled tell you? It's there for a while. Okay, so Gemara says, if that's the case, you're right. So if it's spoiled and therefore you know it's there for a little while, then why does it help to have a majority of matzah? If you know that it was there for a while because it's spoiled, therefore the majority again shouldn't help. So Gemara says, don't say that we misread the Bryce. Doesn't mean that there is more matzah there. Rather, what we're saying is that the days of matzah are many. In other words, what's happening is we're not finding it on day 1 of Yom Tiv. On day 8 of Pesach, you find this piece. Now, the fact that it's spoiled doesn't necessarily tell me that it's bread. It could be it's matzah, because now it's already been out for 8 days. It's hot outside. Who knows? It also could have been spoiled. So when it says Yachib Shita, if that's the case, it's obvious. So we see spoiled something in the matzah box. On the 8th day of matzah, could you assume it's matzah? The answer is, of course you should assume it's matzah. Gemara says, "Lo, we're talking about a case where it became very spoiled. Since it's very spoiled, you got since it's very spoiled, you have to assume that maybe it was there for a long time, and therefore it's really bread. Since it's the end of Pesach, you could say that each day the person put warm matzah on top of it, and that's why it got spoiled greatly. Okay, yeah. Bottom line is, fine. That's this unique case. Okay. Ask the Gemara just a little bit further. Umi azil lina basar basar. Do we really go after the last circumstance? Varatanya Rav Yossi Bar Huda Amar Teva shenishtamshu b'mos chul and mos meiser. Let's see if you found a coin in a box that was used for both non-sacred coins and meiser sheni coins. Okay, so you have a box, and the assumption is that if you use this box for regular money, you assume that before Pesach. Not Pesach halachos. You have a box that holds money. You assume if you're going to put tzedakah money in, meiser money in it, meiser sheni in this case, you would first take out the non-meiser sheni money, right? You're not going to put them together. And the Gemara says, if let's say you find a coin there, okay, imrov chulin chulin, and you're not sure about this coin. If the majority of the money there is non-sacred, you can assume it's not sacred. Imrov meiser meiser. If the majority is meiser, then you assume it's meiser. V'mai lezel basar basra. Why don't we go after the last circumstance? Again, the assumption of the Gemara at this point is that before putting in non-meiser money, you would first clear out. Before putting in meiser money, you would first clear out all the chulin money. We don't mix them together. The Gemara's answer is basically no. We're talking about a case where you mix them together. No, we're talking about a case where either it's a box where I don't remember what I used it for last. In other words, I have a money bag, and I know sometimes I use it for tzedakah, sometimes I use it for non-tzedakah. I'm not sure which one was used. Therefore, you can't say, "Oh, go based on the last thing." I don't know what the last thing was. Alternatively, or we're talking about a box where I have piles of basic. I mean, it's very poor planning, but basically, I have like this money box. You put non-sacred coins in one place, sacred coins in the middle, and there's a coin which you're not sure of in the middle. So there, you don't go in the last circumstance. I don't know where it came from. Or we're talking about a case where the coin was found in a hole in the box, and therefore you're not sure. Maybe even after you cleaned it, maybe it got stuck in that hole in that box, and therefore you're not sure what to do with it. Bottom line is, this is a bit of a, bottom line is, we're talking about a case where you're not sure, you find money, and you're not sure what to do with that money. You're not sure if it was set aside for tzedakah. It's a big shaila. What do you do with this in this type of scenario? You're not sure if this money that was set aside is it tzedakah money, is it not tzedakah money, and how do we have to treat it? Fine. But the Gemara basically concludes, again, the spoiled chametz that's found at the end of Pesach, even though it's very spoiled, you could assume that it's matzah, and you don't have to assume that it is chametz. Have a great day.